Hi, it's Cameron with S&B, and today we're going to be installing our brand new Storyteller replacement water tank. This is for all 2019 to 21 Storytellers. It's a direct replacement to the existing 21-gallon tank. This is a 35-gallon tank. It works with all of the existing plumbing. We include a new resistor against the tank, so it displays the accurate percentage of water on your existing display. And we're going to get right into the install. Before you even pull in your Storyteller to your garage, if you're going to be doing it in the garage, it's a good idea to drain the tank. To drain the tank on the 2019 to 21s, you'll open this cabinet, and then there's two black valves in there. The black valve that's attached to the hose that's going into the floor. So this one right here, you follow it up. If you can see my hand in there, it's kind of hard to see. Right there, and you'll twist that knob. As soon as you twist it, you'll see water dripping out onto the ground. And you'll want to drain it out as much as you can so you don't make a mess inside your Storyteller. Now we're going to be removing the side panel as well as the top panel that's holding the bed so we can get access to the tank. There are a total of 4 different kinds of screws that Storyteller uses. There's these screws, which are holding the metal trim down. There's these small screws that are holding the corner trim. Then there is also the screws that are holding the wood behind here against the aluminum that holds the tank from tipping. So now we're going to get started and keep these screws organized. And this trim piece will just come off like that. As soon as you remove that trim piece, there are 3 more screws right here. These are the different screws. Now we'll go to the top. Now once you have all the top screws removed, we'll be removing this trim piece. And now we're going to go do these 3 screws that are hiding behind that trim piece. Then after that, we'll be taking off the final corner trim piece as well as the screws that are hiding behind that. Once all those screws are removed, this panel will come off. You'll remove the electrical connector that is connected to the lights. And what we'll do to keep this safe and clean is just move it up to the front of the vehicle. So now that we have the side panel removed, now we're going to be working on taking off the top panel, which is connected to the bed. There's 3 screws here that are right next to this hinge that we're going to back out. You might need a different. Oh, there's barely enough room to get this in there. So these are a different screw than the other ones. Then the final remaining screw will be the one going from here into the wood panel. So now that we've removed these 3 screws, which are going from this top panel down to the bottom portion, we are going to be moving the bed down, and we want to look and see, here are the 2x4s. You can eyeball it to see which ones of these screws that are going from the piano hinge into that top panel, which ones of those could be going into the 2x4s, because we're going to need to remove these. We're going to need to remove a select few of these, or they're going to be stuck into the 2x4 when we try to lift. You do not need to remove all of them, just the ones that look like they could be going into the 2x4. So the first 2x4 is right here, and I'm just going to follow this up all the way down, and it looks like this screw 2x4 most likely goes right here. This screw could be into that 2x4. So we are gonna remove this one real quick. Now the second 2x4 is following this metal panel. So we'll trace this down, and it looks like that screw is gonna be in the 2x4. Now this third one, trace that, follow it back, and it looks like this one. And this last one, we'll follow this up, and it looks like this one could be connected to the 2x4. And you will know if you missed one, or if one still is connected to the wood down there, because when we go to raise this panel and the bed off, you wouldn't be able to get it to lift. You'll see where it's still connected. Now after doing those first set of screws, we're gonna put the bed down because there's a few more brackets that we need to get to. So now there's a couple more metal trim plates that we need to remove. The first is gonna be back here, as well as the screws that are below it. So there are no screws below it on this side. And lastly, this screw that's holding this trim panel on. Now I found a hand for this step. The first part of this step is gonna be putting the legs back up, and we're gonna lift up in my way to get this panel out. If it doesn't break loose right away, then you probably missed a screw, so go back and find that screw you missed. But this one just comes out this way and then forward, and now it's free. Now we're gonna remove all these wood pieces, top and bottom. You can see these are a longer screw. Now once all those are out, we'll just pull up on these and set these wood pieces aside. So now we'll be removing this plumbing. And don't lose this gasket here. So now we'll be removing this nut from the all thread. So the same 9/16 nut is on the bottom as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get on it from the top, and I'm gonna use a wrench on the bottom. Probably won't be able to see all the way in here, and then just get on the nut on the bottom as well. Okay. And it'll fall off right here on the bottom this time. Okay, so here's that nut. And same goes for the other side. So now we're gonna be removing this top portion, putting it out of the way. Again, if one of these gaskets comes off, make sure you keep track of it or just place it back in. Then now what we're going to do is also remove the electrical. Just depress that button, put that out of the way. And there's fittings on the bottom we need to remove for the drain. And so what we're going to do when we do that is try to get this tilted up a little bit, so when we do remove those, the water doesn't drip out. Because there probably is some residual water in there. So maybe you can just hold it up and get to these bottom fittings. Then this one as well. And also while we're down here is we're going to pull up on this pipe and bring it out of the floor. And we will get this out of the way. And once that's done, we will also get this tank out as well. So as you saw in the S&B tank, we already have the resistor on the tank. It's going to measure the water, but we do need this module off of the existing tank. So what we're going to do is we're going to snip these wires. And we are going to pry off this piece, either with the razor blade, flathead screwdriver. Comes off pretty easy. Now we're going to go to the S&B tank. And this is going to be placed right here. But now we're going to crimp these wires on to the wires that are coming off of the tank. Now I'm going to use these wire strippers, strip this existing stock wire. And then I'm going to take off the red film, place the module on there. We will crimp this wire in here and this wire to this one here. Now we'll crimp these wires. As well as this one. And give it a tug to make sure it's not loose. Now we'll use a 7/8 wrench to take off the existing fittings. These are the top two fittings. We'll be including a new one of these. And then when we take off this fitting, we'll use a cloth over it so we don't damage the threads. As well as the fittings that are on the back side. These are the two bottom fittings. Now when putting the tank in, make sure this area is free. I'm holding this vent out of the vehicle and away, but make sure all these hoses aren't in the way of where the tank's gonna go. And to start, we're gonna lift the tank up, put it in this corner first. And there's this cage where the tank sits in. So as soon as it gets into that cage, you'll see it drop down. Now we're going to start putting on those brass vents that we just took off on the top as well as on the bottom, as well as put the wood and the vent in and get this S&B tank ready to go. So now we're going to be using this pipe sealant to put some new pipe sealant on these threads. Now we're going to be putting these two fittings into the bottom of the tank. Do it by hand to start, and be careful to not cross thread. So I have these fittings in here. As far as they're going to go by hand, and we're going to do a couple turns here with the wrench, being careful to not over tighten the fittings. They're MPT, so they're not going to go all the way into the tank, so you will see a few threads. And since I'm down here, I'm going to connect these hoses to the bottom of the tank. Now we're also going to connect this electrical at this time. We'll keep this down here. Now we're going to be installing the included S&B fittings. So this is the first one. So be careful not to cross thread. Just get the fitting going until it catches. There we go. It's got one left. Then the S&B extension fitting. But this will go on here nice and easy. And again, these fittings aren't super tight because it is, you know, plastic or brass on plastic. Now we're going to be installing the vent nipple right into here. Use a few turns through it. Make sure this gasket is here. It might be in the black piece, but if it's not, make sure it's here. And because the S&B tank's taller, we're gonna have to extend the vent a little bit. So we'll get this going. And to get this back installed, you're gonna wanna pull this hose this way. And it's gonna slide right here through the slot in the tank. Fish this down and into the hole that goes out to the bottom of the tank, or bottom of the van. Now we'll go up to the top. Again, make sure that gasket is still there. And we'll get this fitting on. Now, as you might notice, the tank looks a little bit differently. So what we ended up doing behind scenes is we changed where the resistor is on the side of the tank. We ended up putting it over here so it stays better protected away from that side wood panel. So instructions stay the same. This just gets routed below. Then now we're going to be putting in this wooden panel right in between the pipe and the piece of aluminum tape. After the piece of wood, we'll be reinstalling this original bracket. There we go. There's a slot in the S&B tank. That's where we're going to be putting in the all thread. Now we're going to be putting on the nut on the new all thread. Put this on by hand. We're going to get this tightened to where it is flush with the top. It's going to give you plenty of threads on the bottom. So we'll put this in from the top. So you can go through that bottom hole. We'll get this started by hand, and then again run it in with the impact. And I'm holding the underside of this nut, and Colin is going to tighten it up. Now we're going to be doing the same for the other side. Now that we have the tank installed and it's empty, we're going to be calibrating the new tank for empty. So we're going to hold down menu, turn it on. We're going to scroll up until we find calibrate tanks. We're going to hit OK. So it's on the fresh tank. So we're going to press OK. And empty full. OK. And we're going to say save empty value. Yes. And now that setting in the computer just saved for that being empty. And now we're going to do this process again, and we're going to find full value when the tank is full. Now we are going to be doing probably the most important step during the install, is to make sure that there's no leaks. And we are doing this before we have the top and the side installed on the tank. So we got our fresh water hose screwed into the side of the tank. My partner is going to go turn on the water, and we are going to watch the tank to make sure that there's no leaks anywhere on the tank, top fittings, bottom fittings. So if there's anything that needs to be corrected or fixed, we can do it now before the cover's on. The water's still running. We can see the water level. It's almost to the top. A little hard to see, but we're gonna know it's full when it starts dripping out of the bottom. So we will wait and listen to when it's completely full, then we'll check the top fittings to make sure there's no leaks. Looks like there's still a little bit more room. Okay, there we go. Now we're gonna check to make sure that there's no leaks on the top fittings. And we're good. Now that the tank is full, we're going to show the computer that the tank is full. Holding down menu and on, enable tanks. We're going to go up to calibrate tanks. Okay. Fresh tank. Okay. Empty full. And press OK again. And with the up arrow, we're going to go save full value. And we're going to press OK. And now that value is saved. So now to test that it's working, we're going to turn it on and wait to see what the fresh water value says. So fresh water tank is completely full, and now we know it's working. Now we're going to be putting the top portion on that holds half the bed. We have the legs out to help support it. Now to start, we're going to be putting these screws in the top. Earlier I said there was 4 of them, or there's 3 of them, there's actually 4. Now we're going to be putting the screws back in for the ones we took out of the hinge. It's the same size screw that we just used. Now we're going to put in our top trim pieces. This just slides on in. Line it up with the hole, and it's this screw. Now we're going to go to the other side, and we're just going to use the bolts that go in through the top. Do not drill into here. This is that black trim piece that goes through here. So this is going to be installed with the smaller screw. So we'll bring the bed down. So now we're going to put this trim piece in here. And find those existing holes. Now we're going to be putting the side panel first, make sure the electrical is connected. Make sure you didn't get these mixed up either. So now that we're ready to put this wood side panel in, if these wires are touching the tank right here, just bring these wires, just move it up. Now we'll line everything up, and we'll begin fastening the side panel in. So these silver screws are the screws that are going into the metal here. Get that lined up. Next one. So for these bigger screws, the silver ones, there's 3 on the top, 3 on that side, and 3 on this side, and it's the bigger of the holes. Now we'll be putting on the metal trim pieces. So for the top one, you can see here there's this hole in the corner. Don't drill into that one or this one, because that's for that plastic cap that goes after. We're going to be screwing into that hole. So we'll line it up. And for this corner trim, again, don't drill that top hole. Start with the one below it. Now the same for the other side. Now lastly, these corner plastic trim pieces. These use the smallest of the screws. Now we're putting in this last corner trim piece. Now, as you can see, or should I say not see, there's 35 gallons of water on board, all behind this existing panel. Now the installation is complete. If you have any questions or you just want to find out more, give us a call or reach out to one of our dealers. Thank you.